Hello, everybody, and welcome to, well, a rant, because there is definitely a lot to cover here when it comes to the Genesis release on Ark Survival Ascended. For those of you who do not know, this is basically a map that's based in a simulation. There are 5 different regions, one of them being the ocean, and this is a remake of the old map from Evolved. So, what they decided to do was that they were going to expand the ocean biome, basically making it huge and its own thing. That's fine and dandy in and of itself, except for the fact that when they expanded it, they also just didn't really work on it. We'll cover that here in just a minute. When you look at the surface of this ocean, you think, oh my god, this is beautiful. Look at the clouds, look at the ocean, how it ripples, it even reacts to certain weather. This is great, this is phenomenal, this is something that we've all been wanting, and it's very clear that they were importing a lot of their ideas from Atlas, which was a failed project of theirs basically, because it just didn't really pick up the steam like Ark Survival Evolved did. Now, this is much like when you look at an iceberg and 70% of it is underwater. That is how I always view an ocean biome. An ocean biome is basically an iceberg. So most of the content should be underwater. Now, I think because they focused on the Tides of Fortune DLC, they put basically most, if not all of their content on the surface of the ocean instead of down below. So you're definitely dealing with like an iceberg that somehow is so light that 80% of it is floating above, 20% of it is below. What do I mean by that? Well, if you go down below the waters and actually submerge yourself, you will find that at the very bottom of the ocean is just a barrier. There is a barrier, and the only thing you'll really find landmass wise is if you go to 50/50, which has some of the original ocean biome. And then if you go around all of these little islands, there's land masses below it just a little bit. But when you look at how expansive this map is, then you realize there's just miles and miles and miles of barrier. It shows a lack of creativity or a lack of wanting to make it. It's definitely unfinished. To try to throw this and make it look like it's finished is really not a surprise when you consider that Snail Games is behind them, pushing them to do their content a certain way. And so they're always going to end up with stuff like this. Normally, when map remakes come out, I'm super excited because they've actually been nailing them on the head. I've liked every remake they've done so far. But with the ocean biome on Genesis, it is just a big pile of nothing down below. And Genesis for me was my favorite map, so I was looking forward to an expansive ocean biome because that was also my favorite biome. I was looking forward to seeing a huge underwater network. Now, the thing is I know I'm not alone when it comes to having this opinion. My wife is, for one, also agrees. She's very upset about it. And every time I go to the comments of like certain creators, and I will not name creators because I'm not trying to cause issues here, if I go into the comments are talking about the lack of content in the ocean biome and the miles and miles of just barrier constantly. They're talking about it constantly, but the creators aren't. Basically, very few creators have commented on it, and even if they do, it's like a passing comment and then they just let it go. I don't know if that's intentional. I don't know if they're just trying not to get involved, start drama, or maybe they're waiting for an update to see what's going on with the ocean biome. I'm not entirely clear. But I'm going to speak my mind because I feel like there needs to be an area platform for everyone who has this agreement to kind of discuss it and sit down because this is just a lack of content. And I've seen some comments trying to argue it, be like, well, this may be helping with frame rate and stuff like that. Here's the thing, right? I'm going to point out something, two maps where the ocean is probably bigger and they could just simply take ideas from them. The first one is Astraeos. Astraeos has a huge water network, both shallow and deep. You could easily take inspiration from Astraeos or just do what Astraeos did, and in certain areas where there's just water, you just fill in the bottom with sand and seaweed. That would have been the much better outcome than trying to do this immediate, like, throw it out there, it's not done, it's fine, we'll work on the bottom later, or they're just going to leave it at the bottom, which I'm sorry to say, if you keep it this way, it is not an ocean biome, it is an aquarium. I'm just going to say that. That is not an ocean biome. You would need to change the name to aquarium because no. So, and then another example of deep waters having rich bottoms in the water, and again, having an immense amount of water, is the center. Both the center and Astraeos are prime examples of if they just took the time, they could easily fill the bottom, and it's not going to fuck with a frame rate. There is no excuse for not having the bottom of an ocean when there are two maps with massive water expanses that are completely filled in. Astraeos isn't even done. There's still going to be more water. That's still going to have more underground yet. That map is huge and is going to have a whole underwater deal. I think a whole underwater boss potentially, if I remember right. So there's definitely no excuse for why they didn't, besides the fact that they ran out of time or they just couldn't think of content to put in. But there hasn't been an update on that just yet, and I'm kind of still waiting for that update to occur. Now, I will say it definitely feels like they were so focused on the Tides of Fortune DLC content for this map that they basically were willing to do all of the surface work and get this out as fast as possible and ignore the bottom work or get to the bottom work later. Which again, if they get to it later, that's fine. That's not necessarily the issue, but there's no updates. This could be just how it is permanently. And I really hope that that is not the case, because that would just be extremely unfortunate and just downright disrespectful to the original ocean biome. I definitely feel like if you're going to make an ocean biome, make an ocean biome, because an ocean biome is not what's above it, but everything underneath it. The above part is cool, but that is not the primary focus when it comes to an ocean biome. But clearly, that is what it became when the Tides of Fortune DLC became their main focus. So I do hope that they flip their head on that and work on it, or at least post an update saying you're going to work on it, because it's very clear the map is unfinished. I've also noticed some weird barriers at some points in other parts of the map, in like the volcanic zone and so on and so forth. So I definitely feel like the map was released unfinished, and that could just be me being wrong, but this is also Ark Survival Ascended. Maps do get released unfinished. So I don't know if how many people will end up on here who have the same grievance or opinion as me. That's completely fine. I just was very baffled by it. And now, mind you, I don't know what's going on. I'm not, part of the development team, but maybe be a bit more transparent if you're going to release a map that is clearly not finished, not done. And also, they released the map extremely unbalanced. By extremely unbalanced, I mean there are level 1,000 some odd sharks and other critters down below by the barrier. I don't know if this was like kind of a way to like kill people before they saw the barrier. That's kind of what it feels like to me, but I could be entirely wrong. But yeah, there is just creatures over level 1,000, untamable. They're just normal sharks and stuff, and they're everywhere. Not only did you remove most of the content under the water, it almost feels like you're trying to push people out of the water onto the surface and forcing them to get boats and stuff by making extremely high level creatures that roam the waters just able to chomp you in one bite. It doesn't matter what level you are, due to the ridiculous levels that they have. I hope that's not the case. That is just like that is just me overthinking potentially. So take that with a heavy grain of salt. But the fact that, again, no ocean bottom, high level creatures making the water very dangerous to traverse via swimming or critters, it makes you wonder if that's their kind of way of trying to help push the Tides of Fortune DLC. And if that is the case, that is an extremely sleazy tactic. And I wouldn't put that sleazy tactic on Wildcard. I'd probably put that on Snail Games if that is the case. Again, I could be entirely wrong. That is just speculation at best, but it is at this point like the ocean biome, I guess, overall at the end of the day is just extremely disappointing. I don't know what the thought process was behind rushing it, because that's exactly what this is. I think they focused so much on the water physics and the pirate DLC that they rushed the ocean biome to the point where there's no ocean. There is the water, but that does not classify as an ocean in and of itself. It is everything underneath of it, the reefs, the biomes, the seaweed, the underwater, like Also, as a little side note, if you wanted to make it to where the ocean was like bottomless and make it appear bottomless, I think a nifty little thing you could have done instead of doing a barrier is put a limit like where the water just gets really black. And if you go a little bit past that, you die by water pressure. That would have been a pretty nifty way of doing it, because at the very least then it would have been terrifying. And if you died due to high water pressure, I would have been like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. But instead, again, we got a barrier and extremely high level dinos for no other reason than for the fact of potential unbalance. And if that's not an unbalanced mechanic, then that feels like a really weird mechanic of keeping people away from the barrier. So that is my tangent. That is my moment. I understand. This is not my normal thing. This is kind of a no filter rant, but I do hope you all enjoy. I hope some of y'all understand where I'm coming from, see where I'm coming from. I see plenty of comments who have this exact same issue. I'm definitely not a minority voice when it comes to people who have an issue with the ocean biome. I think a lot of people have a problem with the fact that there is no bottom. Like, there is an inventive way to do that, and then there is this weird cheese way to do it. So I hope that y'all update it and either, make it to where it is bottomless and you will die due to water pressure, or at the very least, make it to where there is sand and some seaweed at the bottom, maybe some basic materials like rocks and stuff. Like, just the bare minimum. You could have done the bare minimum across most of the ocean, and I don't think people would have complained as much. So I'm like, oh, there's not a whole lot of content, but at least there wasn't an ugly barrier sitting at the bottom. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and wish y'all sweet dreams, and hopefully y'all enjoyed the rant.